Have you ever lived in a town, a place, a city, in a state, or simply in a country where the people of the location have declared that each sector has no law enforcement, no police, and have chosen to defund their power and control to prevent violence and death and dying, and started to make a rap song inspired by Tupac Shakur, Thug's Mansion, and Eminem, Love the Way You Lie. And when all was said and done, the police had shown up. The woman down the hall declared a violent criminal in the hallway. And sat quietly for a moment to adjust. Remembering the tragedy with the businesses getting destroyed and looted. People taking perfume out of Nordstrom's and throwing it to their comrades and their activist friends, their rioters. People carrying armloads of clothes out of North Face, dropping them on the ground, and seeing hangers all over downtown. Have you ever gotten Om tattooed on each of your hands from a Tibetan elder who fled from a communist nation takeover of his home and where his family still lives now? And tried not to be confused. Attempted to not let the depression set in so much you get as fat, slow, and methodical as a cigarette tobacco puff. Comedians often commit suicide. Some for neurological problems, from what they said about Robin Williams, and also mysterious conditions, cocaine use, drug use, alcoholism, and plain old hatred for people who watch what other people do with their bodies and say, well, you also need to watch what your brain says out of your big, fat, ugly mouth now. Have you ever considered the irony of having a country overthrown by communism tattooed on my arms and told by the most free place on earth with the most obnoxious and outrageous rules for safety and security now, that not only am I incorrect, not only am I a menace to their peace and calm, those poor women and ladies and girls and men and male humans, those feminists, and those equality-loving anarchists and Antifa supporting tribal leaders. But I'm a white racist supremacist. And I need to be put to death with the gas chamber. I am a liar with this kind of blasphemy on the left side of my torso. And not worth the spit and the emptiness I feel from the lack of honesty in this world now. My friend Rigzin, he grew up in Tinke, Tibet. Went to India along with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. When China came in Mao's revolution for a new and better system of power and prestige, took the precious resources they had, killed and violently beat people to death, monks, nuns, lamas, who had no guns, who had yak fur, fat from the sheep, to keep their families from getting too cold during the snowy winter months. And we had this friend that we'd go out to dinner with, and who he had known for over 30 years, he said, who was a socialist, a Bernie Sanders enthusiastic barbarian for veganism. In astrophysics. And he'd always buy us dinner so generously and so thoughtfully once a month. Help us get some food. Years went by. We went out after we got done with the shop he owned. And then I blinked. I had the same moment of pause I did in Bellingham, Washington when I went to the Vikings College in the community of Bellingham, where they have a community co-op. Lots of people with incense and tie-dye. And everything seemed so wonderful. Every day went by so smoothly, so gently. And so noticeably, without any bumps, any dysfunction. Until I sat down with my two friends one night and was so hungry and was receiving so much attention, I finally broke down and left and exited the restaurant and never went back. A person can agree, and a person can put their hand up, and yet can't say a word. A sentence. Use any language not deemed appropriate. Now, and for all I know, the whole world's like Seattle, Washington on Capitol Hill. People banging their heads, smashing stuff in the middle of the day, listening to their neighbors in the apartment next door and the house they have on their street with the neighborhood up to date. There's nobody here in Seattle, Washington, Capitol Hill, who's in charge. There's civil war, and there are tribal leaders, and there are elder women, ladies and boys, hooking up and making babies, sharing essentials and lentils and soft, tender hours with one another together. The tragedy with stand-up comedy, in the final conclusion, doesn't have to do with the effort and the energy. The process and the work and the achievement are ruined by the outcome. And the simplified explanation for paranoia, sadness, neglect, and failure to recognize you don't get to freedom with violence, and you don't get to end your racism by decrying a sound and eliminating a gesture. These are all parts of the body, brain, and the mind you hold in so much value, and where the cognitive dissonance makes you horny and hot and sweaty. Has your glimmer, your shiny object nobody talks about now.